Hello, good afternoon, guys. I hope you're all doing great. Wonderful Friday today. I'm recording this live from AK Poku Law. Hi, guys. Join in. We're hanging out on this Friday afternoon. We're still celebrating and discussing, the big win from yesterday, and then we're going to be talking about the medical disability exception for citizenship. All right, guys. So first of all, let's start with what is a properly filed N648. N648. What does it mean to have a properly filed form, guys? We'll talk very briefly about this, and then we'll talk about what happened and what lessons we can draw from it. Guys, drop me a comment. Let me see that you're watching, and let me know that you're here with me. Okay, so normally if you're filing an N648, that is the medical disability exception form, it simply means that you are asking that, look, I can't go through the English test and I can't go through the civics requirements test for citizenship. So please, just take me out of that test because I have some sort of impairment, okay? So if we say that an application, an N648 is properly filed, it has to be timely filed also. So at the time you're submitting your N400, you need to do the medical disability form concurrently, okay? So in fact, what we're going to do is, I'm not going to bore you with the details of how to file an N648. I just want to give a brief overview, and then we'll talk about exactly what happened yesterday. I'm very excited to discuss it. So guys, stick with me. So the N400 has to be filed concurrently with the N400 and the N648 have to be filed concurrently. Okay. Try not to do late submissions. Try to do an initial submission of your application for citizenship along with your medical disability exception application as well. Okay, let's read a couple of comments, then we'll be back. Aboagye Jimfua says, hi, hello, Jimfua, how are you? Mami Korwa Ba says, hello, hi. Mami Korwa, happy to have you here. Jimfua says, you're the best, keep it up. Thank you so much, Jimfua. Guys, stick with me and let's continue to talk about this. So, do a concurrent filing. And as I mentioned yesterday, normally the English and civics requirement apply to people who have a physical or developmental disability, or they have a mental impairment, okay? And they cannot meet the requirements. They cannot meet the requirements because under the English test, we have the reading English, speaking English, and writing English. If you want to become a U.S. citizen, you should read English, you should write English, and you should speak English. And then on the one hand, we have the civics requirements test. The civics test has to do with, learning the history about the United States. Like, okay, maybe what does the flag of the United States look like, or what does the president do, or what does veto power mean, or who's the founding father of the U.S. I've done a couple of videos going through all the 100 questions that the civics test the civics exam will test you on the day of your exam. So you can review that for the exam. So during the medical disability means that, look, I can't go through all of that because I do have a physical or developmental disability or a mental impairment. And so please accept me from, take me out of the exam. Okay. But the hurdle to jump when you file this is very, very high because, why should they take you out of this? Because they feel like everybody needs to go through this, and it's not an excuse if you're an illiterate. And the problem is that immigrants come, and some of them are from countries where they don't speak English. So it becomes very difficult trying to pass the reading, writing, and the speaking of the English, and even the history, trying to learn it and all of that. So what they don't want is, well, number one, the first thing is that this, okay, so let me recap this. So the English and the civics requirements do not apply to naturalization applicants or people who are applying for citizenship if they are unable to comply due to a medically determinable physical or developmental disability or mental impairment, as I said. And that medical problem has to have lasted for at least 12 months or is expected to last at least 12 months. So if it just lasted for 6 months, then you will not be eligible for this exemption. This problem has to have lasted for at least 12 months. Okay, so today I don't have my mug, so I'm drinking out of a bottle. Forgive me, guys. So the problem has to have lasted for 12 months at least to have you qualify. And the issue has to be medically determinable. Okay, so it shouldn't be a spiritual issue, guys. Like, I'm from Ghana and I know people sometimes they feel like, oh yeah, I have a problem, but it's a spiritual problem. We're not doing spiritual problems here. It has to be a medically determinable type of developmental disability or a mental impairment or a physical disability that will prevent you from actually meeting the requirements that has been set set up in order to become, for you to pass in order to become a U.S. citizen. So medically determinable has even been defined by the law. And what it says is that it's an impairment that results from abnormalities which can be shown by medically acceptable clinical or laboratory diagnostic techniques. So if you went for prayers or fasting and you were diagnosed with a spiritual mental impairment, that will not qualify. It has to be something that went through medically acceptable clinical and laboratory diagnostic. Oh my goodness, I feel the line. Drop me a comment if you can hear me. Drop me a comment. Let me know you can hear me. We are getting some breaks because the office line is ringing and I'm using the same connection. Okay, so let's continue. So guys, yesterday, this is what happened. This is just wonderful, fabulous news. So this client retained me in July. I got a call. I mean, she booked a consult and I spoke with her during the consult and we discussed her issue. She had filed an N400. She had applied for citizenship last year during the COVID in 2020. And she had gone along. She filed the citizenship, and what she did was she also applied for the medical disability exception. And she didn't do it by herself. She had her own immigration lawyer, okay, somebody who has heard hundreds of immigration stories and by that qualifies as an immigration expert on the streets. You know those kinds of people, right? We meet them at parties, and even sometimes I meet them at parties and they want to lecture me on immigration law. I mean, which is fine. Sometimes it's great because I learn from the experiences of others. Not talking about that, but there's some that will insist that they know the law, and the law that they are quoting might have been outdated or they heard it from somebody and it's not entirely true. So yeah, so they went along with one of these our street immigration experts who have who know all the immigration laws, and then they helped them to file this application. So when they came to me, their interview was in about 2 or 3 weeks, and then I took a look at the forms. And yes, the N648 had been concurrently filed with the citizenship application. However, there were very major deficiencies with the medical disability exception, form. And so that wasn't good. She was clearly going to be denied because they hadn't followed. And let me tell you, the doctors or the clinical psychologists or doctors of osteopathy who fill out these forms, a lot of the times don't know what is expected of you. They are medical doctors, so they just write what they want to write, and if you don't have an attorney who's following up on it, you will be in trouble. Okay, great. Mame Korwa says, I can hear you, dear. Thank you so much. Loud and clear. Perfect. I'm sorry for the delay in that. Okay, so guys, so this is what happened. So they had filed her N648 and it had major deficiencies. There were a number of them. Number one, the medical doctor had not certified the form. Number two, the interpreter that they had used hadn't also certified the form. They did not use a telephonic interpreter. They used an in-person interpreter. And when the interpreter is in person, we have to have a certification. Okay. There was also boxes that had not been checked, and there were discrepancies in the doctor's diagnosis. there were just, just a lot of inconsistencies and discrepancies. So so we actually she used a clinical psychologist. So one of the discrepancies was that in the one of the preceding paragraphs, the medical professional had clearly stated that this person, due to her intellectual disability, would not be able to comply with the English and the civics portion of the test. And on the N648, you'll see that there are 4 boxes that have to be checked, where the medical professional has to take which part of the exam the person should not take because of their disability. The doctor had only checked reading and writing and had left out speaking, English, and the civics test. So those were one of the let's start with the first deficiency that happened. So as soon as we got in there, I got in there with my client. So we had prepared, like I did I went through the medical disability form, and then I worked hand in hand with a clinical psychologist. This was 2 years ago. She had filed the form in 2019, the N648. And one other thing is that the N648 has to be filed 6 months before submission, within 6 months. So otherwise it will be out of time or like expired. So there's also been an updated N648 within the past 2 years. There's a new type of form, but it has to be filed within 6 months of the submission of the N400. Okay. So I worked hand in hand with a clinical psychologist. I was like, look, you need to correct all these mistakes. I drafted a document pointing out all the problems. And I'm like, look, please update all this. We did back and forth. She corrected. There were still issues. I went back. We did all that. So by the time the night before the interview, we were almost ready. Well, 2 days before, we did a major prep in my office right here. We did some major drilling with the interpreter she was going to be using over the phone. And then that was that. We went through all the questions on the N400, like, okay, do you agree to the oath of allegiance? And I had my interpreter who was interpreting everything in Chi, like, okay, into J America, Mrani Tumu. Now, then my client would say Annie, then the interpreter would say yes. So that was a prep we did. We did everything. We went through everything, like all the hard political questions. We had to break them down in Chi. We drilled the clients and we did that prep. That was really exciting and funny, because some of the questions on the citizenship, oh my goodness, you guys will not believe it. Like, have you ever been a prostitute? And the interpreter was doing the most. She was like, well, Botu, one of the things she was like, have you ever been a tutu niba or something like that? And we all just broke out laughing. That was just really funny. Some of the questions are unimaginable, like, are you a habitual drunkard? All those things are on the citizenship, because of course they don't want habitual drunkards, they don't want prostitutes according to them. So all those things we had to go through the drill. We were very prepared on the D-Day. The morning of we got there, I got there before everybody else, of course. I read my rules, my statute. I knew the client's case cover to cover. So I got there by, I think, about 6:47 a.m. in the morning. The interview was at 7:30 a.m. And then I sat down waiting for my client. She came and, we just went through a few final things. I just prepped her on what could happen when we get in there. I was like, look, we're taking an updated N648 because what you and your pocket immigration lawyer did would not be, it's going to be unacceptable, that you're going to be outrightly denied. So this is what we have to do. So we went in there, and as soon as we went in there, the officer, he called us in, and then he was like, oh, I don't have a G28. The G28 is actually the form for attorney representation. I was like, yes, I was retained after the fact. And so I gave him my new G28 where the client had signed, and we had all, signed. And then he sat down and then he told us, yes, unfortunately, your N648, we're not going to have the interview because it's been denied. Of course, I anticipated it. And so I hand him out. I was like, yes, I have an updated N648. And that's where all hell broke loose. Oh my goodness, guys, all hell broke loose. So the guy did not expect that. And so he was like, we cannot accept your N648. And I'm like, why can you not accept the N648? And he's like, because you should have filed it with the, and I said, yes, we did file it. It was timely filed because the rule says that you can actually file it, but then you can also submit an updated one. And he's like, yeah, show me. And so I had printed out, guys, I had printed out my entire policy manual, the rules for this disability. I had read it cover to cover, and I was ready for this officer. So I pulled it out. I was like, okay, under filing, we have 3 rules, and this has to fall under one of them. Okay, it's definitely not an initial submission because the client has already submitted one which is defective. So what we're trying to do is submit an update, and so this could probably qualify as a late submission. And under the rules, USCIS may consider a later filed Form N648 if the applicant provides a credible explanation for filing the N648 after filing the citizenship and submits evidence in support of that explanation. And I said, we have provided a credible explanation, and according to the statute, you are therefore allowed to consider this. And then he was like, okay, well, it's not really a late submission. I am like, I agree. However, if you want to go under the umbrella of multiple submissions, then under the rule of multiple submissions, it says that if multiple forms N648 are submitted at the same time, an officer should question the applicant about the reasons for any additional forms N648 and carefully examine discrepancies between the documents. Okay, and there were like significant discrepancies would be a basis for finding that it's insufficient. I said, okay, so if you want to look at this as a multiple submission, the rules do not provide for an outright rejection of a multiple submission. What it does is that it gives the officer room to only question if there are discrepancies, to review and see if there are major discrepancies. There are no major discrepancies. These are just procedural errors that the medical professional failed to address, and so we just made sure that he had complied with some of the things that he had left out, and whatever discrepancies, we corrected them. So that was and then the officer said, okay, he's going to call his supervisor. So in fact, even before then, the officer also came with this rule. He was like, I've read it, and I'm unable to still I'm unable to consider this to be fine because it says that the applicant is an illiterate, and illiteracy cannot be a valid reason to seek exception to the English and civics requirements. I'm like, yes, but that is a gross misstatement of the law. The rule says that illiteracy alone is not a valid reason, and that so my client is not only illiterate, but she also has an intellectual disability, which is a developmental disability, which is an impairment according to the statute. So the rule gives way not only for illiteracy, but illiteracy along with another impairment to form the basis for the medical disability exception. And then he's like, okay. And then now he begins to question. He started questioning he was like, oh, there's not enough evidence. And I said, hold it right there. According to the statute and the INA, and the policy manual of the USCIS, you are not allowed to actually determine the validity of a medical diagnosis or second guess why a diagnosis precludes the applicant from going through the test, because you are not a medical professional. So if you have credible doubts about the exam that the medical professional has conducted, what you should do is to request the applicant to undergo an additional testing or whatever. But you cannot actually attempt to, perform medical work when you're not a medical professional. So I had him right, and then he's like, okay, let's go see that. So he went to see his supervisor, came back. So he took us out of the room. At this minute, I was just like, oh my goodness, I was just reading through my rules furiously, like just making sure I had everything covered. So we stayed outside for like 20 minutes. And then he called us back in. He's like, oh, well, so yeah, we're still not able to accept it. Oh my goodness. So I just gave him more legal arguments. I just pleaded like my case. I stated it out using the facts of my client's case along with the laws. I was like, look, the medical professional has stated that not only is my client illiterate, but she has a genetic vulnerability that was, that normally begins at birth. And so she's not only illiterate, and she's not asking for the exception based on her illiteracy, but also based on the fact that she has an intellectual disability. And then, she went on to say that I went on to say that the medical professional had also even stated that my client actually completed high school, and so he cannot say that we're asking for the exception simply because she's illiterate, because in fact she's not illiterate, she's actually educated, she completed high school. So that argument will also not hold. And then I also stated that, look, the medical professional has also pointed out in her diagnosis that it's impossible to determine the actual cause of my client's intellectual disability, and so he cannot attribute it to illiteracy per se, because the medical professional also worded it in a funny way. She stated that it's highly likely that the applicant may have the intellectual disability because of low academic standards. Oh my goodness, Ghana, right? So yeah, I had to hide my face at this point, but I still, strongly made the argument that because the cause of the disability could not be determined, we could not attribute it solely to illiteracy, and so therefore my client was not exempted from the exception. Okay, so that was it. And then I also went on, and at this point, look, I even when I had to stand, because we all had seats, when I had to stand to make my arguments, because I didn't have the old N648 that they had submitted previously, so I would stand up, go to the officer, I'm like, may I please borrow yours, because I don't have it, when he was trying to say that, oh, this wasn't in the old one and it was in the new one, so trying to prove that there were discrepancies, I would go and ask him, and I was like, look, there are no discrepancies here, it's right here, line this, because of course I knew where everything was. And then I told him that once the medical professional had used systems and methods that were medically acceptable and they were clinical, and she had also used laboratory diagnostic techniques, then she could not question the validity of the diagnosis. And so the WAI's assessment test has been done, the clock, whatever, anti-clock finger, whatever test had been done, and it had shown that the client was actually intellectually disabled. So at this point, the officer realized that, look, this lady really came, because every deficiency he mentioned, I had a point of law to counter it, and I would quote directly from the law. So it's like, look, I would read and quote and explain and back it with facts. So he now goes out again, goes to call the supervisor, who now comes in, like, who's this attorney causing us? So she comes in and is like, oh yeah, should I explain to you why the form is not accepted? I'm like, no, hold on, don't explain to me why the form should not be accepted. Let me explain to you why this form is valid and should be accepted. And so I start with my arguments, I go through everything. And then they were like, okay, why is it that the previous form, the officer didn't check, speaking English and civics test? I'm like, because in the preceding paragraph, you could even see that the medical professional had even stated that my client should be exempted from the English and civics test. And under English test, there was reading, writing, and speaking English. And under civics test, that was one umbrella. So if she said she should be accepted and forgot to check 2 boxes instead of all the 4 in the next question, then there's clearly, an omission on the part of the medical professional. And so that was one of the things we corrected. So, I just went through my laws, and simply just, I was fierce in defending my clients. I could see my client jubilating silently in her seat, because it's like the supervisor then, like, when I quote the law and I read it, the supervisor goes, verifies it, and then looks at the officer, and then, she nods her head, and then the officer nods, and then they whisper. I'm like, you guys can confer for all I care. I have all the laws here, and we are ready for you guys. So, well, thankfully, the supervisor was like, I think the attorney is defending her client. She simply represented her client and held, that's what she's been hired for. And she allowed the medical professional to correct the mistakes that were on the form. I think we should accept this. We should certainly waive the client and allow the client not to go through the English and the civics test. Guys, this was after 1.5 hours of legal arguments back and forth, and I was using the facts of my client's case, using the laws. It was just exciting. I could feel I was in my element, because the night before, this was my best friend. I read this cover to cover again. Of course, I've read it, but I read it cover to cover, and I was very conversant with everything in there. So I was just so excited. So thankfully, guess what? So after we did everything, the officer told us that he didn't even bother to review my client's application for citizenship because they knew that the application was denied. So they didn't even, once the N648 is defective, the whole application is denied. So, well, of course, unless you are able to say that, okay, well, I'll still go through the test. But most of the time, most people, they have a disability, so wouldn't want to go through it. So because they denied the N648, he didn't even go through the citizenship application, so he would need time to go through it and all of that. So he actually ticked, you have been approved and waived for the exemption to the civics and the English test. I was so excited that my advocacy had paid off. And once we came out, one thing my client said that stuck with me was, oh my goodness, this type of job, if you are timid and shy and can't speak up for yourself, this isn't for you. Like, she was just shocked at my audacity. I'm like, look, when it comes to these kinds of things, like, I'm not playing. Like, I'm not taking no for an answer, especially when I know that I have the law to back me. I will fight tooth and nail until the last drop of blood. You have to drag me out, So yes, I don't give up without some results. So I was just so happy that it paid off, because some other person would have said, yeah, let's just go and then we'll rectify it. But I was like, ain't having it. Happy we fought till the end, and happy we got victory for this medical disability exception form. So guys, this is what I wanted to share with you. I actually went through most of the arguments that we did. I will try to do another video and then we can talk some more for people who might. The thing is, most people don't do this, so I try to do videos on the things that people have more issues with. So that's it for my storytelling. Let me read a few comments here. Okay, Pretty Girl says hello Pretty Girl. Damian Bobo says hi from Maryland. Damian, how's Maryland going? Okay, Mami Karawa says I can hear you. Mami Karawa, I'm not sure which point you were laughing. Pachikado says lovely looking. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Ama Ajiman Prempe says way to go. Thank you so much, girl. I appreciate you watching. Yeah, Kranti, watching. I can see you were watching. Patrick Ado says you're the best lawyer. Oh my goodness, nothing gives me greater pleasure than to get a win for my clients. Mami Kawa says a very good one, pa, awesome. And then Ophelia says that's a great work. I'm happy for the clients. I know, I'm so happy. What I always say is that a win for the client is also a win for me, because once my name is on, your application, I have to do my very best, the very best that's required of me. So we will try to move heaven and earth for your case as much as we can to see how best we can assist you. So guys, yes, that's it for today. I hope you guys have a wonderful Friday. Call me right there, 802-787-564. I represent immigrants around the U.S. and try to book a consult, and then I'll look at your case and then we'll discuss it and see how best we can assist you. All right, fellas, let me leave you. Be good, stay blessed, and take care. Let me see. I think there's one more new comment. Mami Kwaraba says the 2-2 week me. I know that was really funny because I hadn't heard that word in quite a bit. So yes, that was really, really funny. Patrick Ado says I will come and meet you one day. Of course, Patrick. Let's do that. All right, guys. So have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.